Before we get started, you can also join our Discord community in the description to connect with fellow producers, vocalists, engineers, and graphic artists to collaborate and to just hang out with. So today, let's talk about drums, and in particular, how you can actually have an advantage by starting with your drums and your rhythm, especially when you're in a bit of a rut and you want to start off a new project, but you don't know where to start. And so here I'm going to be going through a few drum loops. I'm going to be showing you how I make them and the reasoning behind what I do. Starting with drums is that whatever you start laying on top of it ideally would fit, or at least the drums give you a good idea of what to put underneath, and you can go on from there. So one of the first things I'm going to be talking about is sample choice. And now there are a few givens when it comes to drums nowadays. I mean, you always want a snare and a clap, a kick, and some extra hats. And of course, there's always room for percussion, and you know I like to use a lot of percussion. But nowadays, I've been looking a lot at fills and their ability to provide some variation and keep things interesting. So sound selection is very important because you almost want to cover the entire frequency spectrum with your drums. Obviously, you want to leave out space for your melodics, but drums do cover everything. You got the low end, you got the mid, and you got a lot of the high end. And so with sound selection, it's important that each element is separate from each other. You always want to be able to choose sounds that have tones that you can be able to clearly define from each other. And that comes a lot with practice, EQing, and filtering. So you can see here, I have not actually used any EQing on each individual channel. And that's because I wanted to show you that if you want to do something quickly, and you choose your sounds correctly, you don't have to worry about it too much in the beginning. So that brings us to our next item, which is space. So you want to be able to leave space in here for the rest of your track. Your drums can be a focal point in your songs, but most of the time they're not your lead element. And although this does sound very hectic, there are clear gaps within the beat to leave room for everything else. As well as on this frequency spectrum, it doesn't sound too busy immediately to your ears, and so you know that something will fit. So let's just toss in some chords. These chords were provided for me from a subscriber, Chaosic. I hope you guys check him out on SoundCloud. And from there, it becomes an editing job rather than a completely creative job, and you already have your starting point. So now we are looking at something I made on stream, but in particular the drums of it. Here it brings me to simplicity. So a lot of the drums I make involve a lot of fills and a lot of different one-shots and all that, and I just want to show you an example of something that's overdone and then brought back. Although it does fit and each individual element is delayed in a way that provides rhythm, necessarily we don't need all of it. So if we can cut things out and still keep the same essence of it, it can be actually more effective. Although that sounds quite sparse, in some songs when you have a lot going on rhythmically through your melody or a lot going on melodically in general, you don't really need it that much, and you can still pull out the same groove that you want. And that also brings us to tonal samples. So if you heard, I have a one shot here, and one shots can be part of your drums, even if they're slightly tonal. If it gets too tonal is when it can start clashing with whatever you want to lay on top of it. When you have melodic elements in your percussion, you either want to tune it or be able to cut out some of the melodics by EQing or not, or having it in a way that it won't even be tonal in order to avoid clashing. So here you can see, although this may have tonal elements, if you want to put different things on top of it, it could work. And so an example here is a bass line. And there you you go. You have your bass idea where you can start building off of that. And another thing with keeping drums interesting is patterning. In Toronto, I'm very lucky to be exposed to many different types of genres, dancehall, Afrobeat styles that don't necessarily have a regular clap pattern, but still provide a lot of groove through the percussion. And so here, just by simply changing the patterning of the clap and where you would expect it to be, you can maintain rhythm while keeping something interesting and fresh. So you don't necessarily have to do this only with MIDI. Of course, you can do this with samples because you want drums that can fit anything. And so what we can do is just find a random sample.
Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly if you'd only believe in me.
And so I've shown you some 4 on the floor drum loop. So here I've just chopped a kick, some percussion, and a clap. And so just using techniques of keeping in mind simplicity, rhythm, avoiding tonality unless I want to, giving each element its own space, as well as sound selection, we can just hear this.